Welcome to Reddit Reads r/ProRevenge. Our first Reddit post is from Alexermtl. Someone stole 25th from me. It ended costing him $500,000. A preamble. I was married to a very OCD and pragmatic man. For example, for him, a big romantic gesture had been to leave me alone for 24 hours at the hospital right after I had our son. But that's another story. I was in dire need of physical contacts because had never touched me, unless he wanted very bland sex, and also never ever kissed me. The story is not about him, it's only a preamble. So I divorced him, not just for what's above, mind you. I felt alone and unloved in this relationship. I just wrote about it to explain the state of mind I was in when I met this other person, that well-call PS. PS was the total opposite. He was very in tune with his emotions. He was very, very intense. This will be important later. He really expressed love like I thought I needed. On our first date, the waitress asked how long we had been together since he was so into me and touching me. He made me feel amazing. He had a huge house and a rather flashy lifestyle. He told me he owned a car wash and a phone marketing company. Fast forward a bit, at this point we had been dating for about a year, and he had just asked me and my son to move in with him. I wasn't 100% sure, but he prepared the room for my son nonetheless. As I started spending more time in his house, still keeping mine, I also started to see strange behavior. He'd be up all night, but sleep all day. I also overheard a few phone calls where I was telling people they owed money and needed to pay, but the conversations didn't fit with a car wash or phone marketing business. At some point, he told me he was having money problem. He said huge clients were late in paying and that it was jeopardizing his house payments. So I, stupid me, offered to help in missing a part of this story, because it started as me offering help with the house since we were there a lot. Still had my house though, but it ended up with me lending him 25th. I cannot for the life of me remember that progression. The loan was supposed to be for 3 weeks, he said. It'd have it all back in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. That 25th came from my retirement savings, college money. It's also money it took me 10 years to put aside. That money was very important to me. During those 3 weeks, I went out to have drinks with my friends and found him on a date with another woman. I saw him French kissing another woman. I said nothing. So anyway, I thought he'd be an adult and would still reimburse the 25th the end of this 3 weeks. Big mistake. Someone I knew told me he was glad I left and proceeded to tell me about him. He said PS was a junkie, hooked on GHB, hence why he was so intense and so into his emotions. That also explained the erratic sleep night patterns, but the final blow at when he told me PS was also a con man, a specialist in defrauding older people by phone. In the beginning I wasn't sure. I believed it, but then bits of what I had overheard in the last year started to make sense, and I realized it was all true. Back to this later. I tried having my money back many different ways. None worked. I was at the end of my rope. So this is what I did. First, he had given me access to pay bills online, not to his bank accounts, but to his emails, so I was able to investigate all his accounts with the same password. I printed screenshot every little bit of information relating to money. I found proof that he was indeed scamming people, and found the people he worked with, and even the name of the person at Western Union who facilitated the money transfer. I found out he was an organized criminal. I also found out he did this between the two countries. I started preparing strike one. Strike one. So for strike one, I printed his face and the face of everyone working with him from their online profiles in defrauding people, and left hundreds of flyers in his neighborhood. I also called the hotline for financial crime prevention in both the countries and gave very specific details and names. Know that even if he had given me the money, this goes against my core values, and I would have done the same thing either way. At this point, I was preparing strike two too. Strike two. I was dumb in lending him money, but at least I did it the right way. I wrote a check. I didn't do cash. I wanted proof just in case. It would turn out to be a great idea. On the check, I had written that it was a loan. Thank you, Judge Judy, for this tip. Since he didn't pay me back, I prepared an invoice and sent it to me from his hacked email. When the time came to do my taxes, I filed the 25th as an expense using this invoice. I have many freelancers. I slid him as one of them, and it passed. Don't ask me how I got his social security number. I can't remember, but I ended up having access to it, so rat him out to the IRS for hiding income. I found out later on through friends that the IRS started investigating him for unpaid tax. I heard he had to pay 38 taxes on that 25th, pay a 20 fine for not declaring income. At this point, I was satisfied. I figured 9,500 in taxes plus 50 in fines was 50 of what he owed me. At least he didn't get away with it all. But remember, I told you on the check I had written that it was a loan. So I took about 23 years, but I took him to court and won. He didn't even show up. To this day, I still haven't seen a cent, but the rest of the story makes it worthwhile. For a while I thought the financial crime call I made had no effect. Now the cherry on top. What I didn't know at the time is that the IRS would team up with Wire Fraud Division and look at everything he did. They were not able to catch him on the wire fraud, but since the house he had did not fit with the money he was declaring, they got him on tax evasion and gave him a certain delay to pay back taxes. I heard it was only 3 months. They got him so good, they ended up freezing his accounts, and he lost his house. The bank foreclosed it. And his debt to the IRS is still open. We are not in the US, so he won't go to jail for this, however. But my 25th, that he did not want to repay, ended up costing him over $500,000. And since you cannot go bankrupt for a debt you owe to the government, I'm happy to tell you that at 40, he had to move back with his parents and ask for welfare, and will probably be paying this for the rest of his life. This story is not finished, however. I just learned that he now has a job as a concierge in the apartment building of his parents, so will be contacting the court to have the money he owes me taken directly from his pay. The thing is, he has no idea I'm the culprit of all his bad fortune. And he recently sent me a message telling me he misses me, that I was an angel for him, and that he regrets what he did. Well, not me, loser, not me. Lil edit, this is my son, who told me about this subreddit and nuclear revenge initially, as he absolutely loves the revenge stories. I only had an account to see interesting to Spock. He didn't really know that story, but now obviously does. Today, he called me up from the basement ultra happy and excited to tell me the story blew up on YouTube, where all teenagers seem to hang now. So thank you all. My son feels like I was about to say little, but he is taller than me, D-star. This comment is from Groenberg. Definitely pro, but I really hope your kid gets his college money back. This comment is from Alex Ermtl. He will, and even more. After this story happened, I started working like crazy and refused to spend on futility, and then my business boomed exponentially at the same time. I believe karma was really still is on my side. This comment is from Butchfishy. TLDR op moves in with a wealthy man who cons her out of 25th. It turns out the man makes money through fraud and organized crime. Op had the smarts and record-keeping skills to nail his ass to the wall for fraud and tax evasion. Op won a lawsuit and it legally entitled to get her 25th back. Meanwhile, the man is fucked to the tune of 500, living with his parents and working a dead-end job. Now, a word from today's sponsor. Make sure to donate to my Patreon down in the description below to get early access to videos, participate in special patron-only events, and other goodies. Any amount of money is greatly appreciated. It makes it easier for me to make the content that I love making, and I know you guys love too. Now back to the video. Our next Reddit post is from Atkian. Try to fail me. See what it gets you. So in 9th grade, I had one of my favorite teachers of all time teaching biology. He was known for his extremely long and difficult packets, but everyone loved him anyway. He was one of those people who can make any assignment or subject seem easy because everyone was having far too much fun to notice how much they were learning. His Ta, however, was another story. She had this internal power struggle going on 247, and she disliked me immediately when I first walked into class. We'll call her Ms. V. Anyway, I began to notice that Ms. V lost a much higher percentage of the assignments I turned in than anyone else, except for a friend of mine who was also on her naughty list. I began writing the date on every assignment I did, having the teacher sign it, and scanning it into my computer. Ms. B knew nothing about this, and instead of just printing out my scan of an assignment, when she lost it, I would just complete and turn it in again, once again getting it signed and scanned. Side note, Ms. B was also one of the lunchtime hall monitors, those people who go around and try to keep a couple hundred middle schoolers in check at once. At least, that was what she was supposed to be doing. Instead, she completely ignored everyone else and blatantly followed me around, systematically adding each and every one of my hiding spots to the not allowed list. Me being awkward and asocial, preferring to read books than be a normal person and talk to people. Anyway, the end of the year rolls around, and the final packet looms ahead. It's the biggest and most difficult of the lot. It also is worth around 40 of that term's grade. Being very wary of this TSBS, I finished and turned it in 2 weeks before it was due. Wouldn't you know, she lost it. This was repeated 7 times, I shit you not. True to my method, I read it each time, and on the 7th time, the day the packet was actually due, I turned it in directly to the teacher and asked him to input the score manually, which he was nice enough to do for me. My grade secure, I then went home, printed out a 6-inch pile of lost assignments, and brought them to the office the next day. I reported her, and when she was called down to the office to report, her face when I pulled this mound of paper out my backpack. The grades were locked by then, so I was off the hook, and she was nearly fired, eventually being reinstated but under close inspection. Last week I revisited the school, where she's apparently still working. It's what sparked this memory, and I tried not to laugh when I walked into the biology room to catch up with the teacher, watching her face literally purple with rage from the corner of the room. This comment is from No Pefzero President. The real question is, why does she still have a job potentially ruining a kid's future because you are power hungry is awful. This comment is from Ravenau Sodomite. Because public schools are dystopian hellscapes devoid of common sense. This comment is from Blake's mate. I had a high school English teacher who didn't like me because I wasn't one of the popular kids. Usually English teachers loved me because I was a good student and loved to read, but he was the wrestling coach and also taught one English course, American literature or something. Dumbest English class I ever took. We had to make a Western movie. Anyway, near the end of the semester he called us one at a time to show us our grades, and he told me I had a C or D, I can't remember which, in the class. My heart almost stopped. When I asked why, he showed me a bunch of zeros where our weekly writing assignment was missing. Said I had turned them in. Fortunately for me, I still had all of my returned assignments in a folder. All the missing assignments were there with his handwritten grades on them. He fixed my grade. I honestly think he was just being a jerk and didn't expect me to keep everything, so I would have been out of luck. He did dare do anything more because I had all the proof, and I was a good kid. My record spoke on my behalf. Only had him the one semester, thankfully. That was Reddit Reads r/ProRevenge. If you like this content, please subscribe and click the bell icon so you are notified of new uploads. We upload new videos every day. Also subscribe to our Patreon, as that will help us a lot. See you next time.